Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we are unpacking a really massive shift in how the world's most successful organizations actually operate. For decades, the corporate world was pretty much obsessed with one thing: raw intellect. It was all about hiring the supposedly smartest person in the room based purely on their IQ. But, well, the global landscape is changing fast. A massive talent deficit is forcing companies to realize that raw intelligence, it simply isn't enough anymore. So today, we're going to reveal the true differentiator for modern corporate success: emotional intelligence, or EQ. We'll explore exactly why the smartest organizations are pivoting their investments from the mind to the emotions, and how this secret weapon is absolutely essential for retaining top talent and building an unstoppable competitive advantage. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to cover 5 key areas on our journey today, starting with global shifts and the true cost of engagement, breaking down exactly what EQ is compared to IQ, and finally, looking at why EQ is the ultimate driver for performance, leadership, and retention. Section 1. Global shifts and talent gaps, the macro view. To really understand why emotional intelligence is suddenly so critical, we have to look at the immense pressure organizations are facing right now. When you project the gaps between global talent demand and supply over a 10-year period, a pretty striking reality emerges. Intense regional competition is brewing. We're seeing countries like Thailand and Singapore becoming net importers of talent. They desperately need to bring people in. Meanwhile, places like the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia are positioned as net exporters. What this means is that talent is highly mobile today, and the landscape is fiercely competitive. If you want to keep your best people, you aren't just competing with the company across the street anymore. You are literally competing globally. Moving on to Section 2. The true cost of engagement, agitating the problem. This global talent squeeze is forcing organizations to look very closely inward at their own operations and the massive financial stakes involved in keeping their teams intact. Let this number sink in for just a second. 40%. An estimated 40% of corporate expenses are directly related to people. For most organizations, human capital is the single largest expense category on the entire balance sheet. You aren't just paying for desks and software. Your biggest investment, by an absolute landslide, is your workforce. Now, what's really interesting about this data is that this massive 40% investment is under severe threat. When employers in the Philippines were asked to identify their top human resource challenges, a staggering 80% pointed to attracting and retaining high-performing employees. That absolutely towers over building critical skills at 68% and managing productivity at 57%. The message here is loud and clear. Companies are terrified of losing their best people because replacing them in a talent-scarce market is incredibly difficult and, quite frankly, painfully expensive. So, how do we protect that massive human capital investment? Well, it all comes down to engagement. Engaged employees exhibit highly specific, resilient behaviors. They're deeply committed to the company, consistently more productive, and highly focused. Crucially, they're significantly less likely to leave the organization and are way more resilient in the face of major organizational changes. They're passionate, they're motivated, and they don't just do the bare minimum, right? They demonstrate innovation and actively offer ideas for improvement. Which brings us to Section 3, IQ versus EQ, defined. The paradigm shift. So how do we actually build that kind of bulletproof engagement? This is where we see a fundamental pivot in talent management. And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. We're moving away from the old corporate reliance on raw intellect, the traditional idea of intelligence as a solitary, brain-focused measurement, where a lone genius sits in a cubicle churning out brilliant ideas. But modern business, it just doesn't work that way anymore. It's a highly collaborative, connected reality. It requires diverse hands supporting each other in continuous team loops. Business today is rarely done in isolation. It completely thrives on connection. Let's clearly contrast the two. IQ is all about your capacity for information, your ability to learn, understand, and apply skills. EQ, on the other hand, is fundamentally different. It is your capacity for emotion, understanding and managing yourself and the people around you so you can actually function effectively as a group. That's the core difference right there. One measures raw processing power, while the other measures relational power. Daniel Goleman, a real pioneer in this field, defines emotional intelligence very simply. He says it's the ability to understand and manage one's own emotions and those of others. And here's the thing. This is no longer seen as some fluffy, soft skill. It is a crucial, hard managerial competency. It's about dealing with emotions creatively and employing our intelligence in a highly constructive, socially beneficial way.
Section 4. Why EQ drives performance. The solution. Okay, we know what it is, but how do we prove this psychological concept actually impacts the bottom line? Well, the data speaks for itself. When researchers conducted a comprehensive analysis of 69 independent studies, the results were totally undeniable. Diverse measures of emotional intelligence directly correlated with both job performance and mental ability. Recent research confirms that EQ plays a far more important role in career success than a person's IQ. I mean, being the smartest person in the room just doesn't matter if you can't communicate, adapt, or collaborate with the people sitting next to you. So the crucial point is this, and it's honestly the absolute best news for talent management. Unlike your IQ, which is basically locked in a jar once you reach adulthood and remains largely static, EQ is dynamic. It's like a plant. It can grow. Through dedicated learning, training, and practice, you can actively cultivate the very trait that drives performance. You aren't just stuck with the emotional intelligence you were born with. And this is exactly why smart organizations are aggressively investing in EQ training for their leaders and their staff. Finally, Section 5, leadership, retention, and teamwork, putting it into practice. Let's look at how leaders can actively deploy EQ to retain the diverse talent they worked so hard to attract. When you break down retention drivers across different age groups, a really fascinating pattern emerges. Yes, base pay is universally important, for sure. But whether an employee is 25 or 55, and especially in that critical 30 to 49-year-old middle management block, one factor consistently ranks in their top 3 reasons for staying: their relationship with their supervisor. And that relationship isn't built on a spreadsheet. It's built on leadership EQ. If your leaders lack emotional intelligence, you are going to lose your best people, regardless of what you pay them. I absolutely love this quote from Patrick Lencioni, the author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He says, not finance, not strategy, not technology. It is teamwork that remains to be the ultimate competitive advantage, both because it's powerful and rare. Building an emotional connection with others is so critical as a leader because it fosters this exact teamwork. Cultivating EQ isn't just about feeling good around the office. It's about building the rarest, most powerful competitive advantage in business today. Ultimately, leadership comes down to this core reality. Who I am precedes what I do. Personal engagement has to precede corporate engagement. A leader needs to manage their own emotional state well before they can impact others in a positive direction. The impact a leader has isn't just in the tasks they assign. It's deeply rooted in the nonverbal cues they send, their tone of voice, their expressions. These are the emotional channels that the human brain is literally wired to read and react to. If a leader projects stress and frustration, the team absorbs it like a sponge. But if they project calm, focused engagement, the team mirrors that, leading to peak performance. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Really ask yourself, how can you possibly be effective in your organization if you're not effective in leading your own life well? The secret weapon in talent management doesn't start with a shiny new software system or a restructured bonus plan. It starts in the mirror. It starts with emotional wellness, self-awareness, and the deliberate practice of emotional intelligence. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this gives you a powerful new perspective on how to lead and thrive in today's highly demanding landscape.